Okay, so you want to own a storage facility. Find some land, put up a few metal buildings, slap some locks on the doors, and watch the rent checks come in every month from people storing their old couches and holiday decorations. Simple business, simple money, or so it looks from the outside. The United States currently has more self-storage facilities than it has McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway locations combined. Over 60,000 of them. They cover more than 2 billion square feet of rentable space, roughly 3 times the landmass of Manhattan. In 2025, this industry generated over $45 billion in annual revenue. Not 45 million, 45 billion. Take Public Storage, the largest operator in the country. In 2025, they pulled in $4.8 billion in revenue. Their profit was nearly $1.8 billion that same year, from renting empty rooms. So the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind right now is this: how does a business built on empty space generate that kind of money? And more importantly, what would it actually take for you to get a piece of it? Before you understand the money, you have to understand the customer, because the storage customer is not who you think they are. You probably picture someone renting a unit to hold junk they cannot bring themselves to throw away. That person exists. But the real economic backbone of this industry is people in transition. When someone goes through a divorce, one household suddenly splits into two, and there is nowhere to put half the furniture. When a family sells their home and buys a new one but the closing dates do not line up, they need somewhere for everything for 60 or 90 days. A college student heading home for the summer cannot haul a full dorm room across 3 states. A small business owner selling products online has outgrown their garage but cannot yet afford a warehouse. A military family gets reassigned with 6 weeks' notice and needs their belongings stored while they figure out housing. None of these people are renting storage because they love the idea of paying monthly rent for a metal box. They are buying time. They are buying the ability to solve a logistical problem without losing everything in the process. And that turns out to be one of the most durable things a business can sell, because the demand for it does not disappear when the economy slows down. In booming economies, people buy more stuff and need somewhere to put it. In recessions, people downsize, lose jobs, and go through life changes, all of which create storage demand. Right now, in 2025 and 2026, the frozen housing market became its own tailwind. High mortgage rates locked millions of Americans out of buying new homes. They stayed in houses that were too small for their lives. 16% of Americans grabbed a storage unit just to cope with the mismatch between the space they had and the belongings they owned. The average tenant stays for about 18 months. Nearly half of all renters stay for more than a year. Only 12% leave within 3 months. You are not running a hotel. You are running a business where your average customer pays you for a year and a half before they leave. Strip everything down to basics, and the storage model works like this. You buy land. You cover it with metal buildings. You divide those buildings into hundreds of small rooms with individual roll-up doors. You rent each room month to month and collect checks. Your costs are mostly fixed. Your revenue grows as you fill more rooms. The single most important number in the entire business is your occupancy rate, the percentage of your total units that are actually rented at any given time. Here is why it matters so much. Your expenses, mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, electricity, do not change significantly whether you are 60% full or 95% full. But your revenue changes enormously. Imagine you build a facility with 500 units and your average rent is $130 per month. At 60% occupancy, you collect $39,000 per month. At 80%, $52,000. At 95%, $61,750. That difference of nearly $23,000 a month does not go toward new costs. Almost all of it goes straight to your bottom line. Once a storage facility climbs past its break-even fill rate, every additional tenant it adds is nearly pure profit. The building does not care how many rooms are rented. The mortgage is the same either way. That asymmetry is the engine that makes this business work. Before you spend $1 on construction, you have to make the most important decision in this entire business: where to build. And this is where a surprising number of investors go wrong before they have even broken ground. Location in storage is not just important, it is everything. A poorly located storage facility is not a struggling business. It is a financial anchor that will drain money from you regardless of how low you price your units. So what does a good location actually look like? First, you need traffic. Real traffic. The industry benchmark is at least 15,000 cars passing your entrance every day for a suburban site. For urban markets, that climbs to 25,000 or more. The reason is simple: visibility from the road is your free advertising. Every car that passes your facility is a potential customer the next time their life gets complicated. Second, you need population density. The rule of thumb is 30,000 residents within a 3-mile radius of your site and 50,000 within 5 miles. Storage is intensely local. People do not drive 45 minutes to rent a storage unit. They want something close to their home or their workplace. Third, look for a high proportion of renters in the surrounding neighborhood. Renters move more frequently than homeowners. They live in apartments without garages or basements. They are your highest demand customer segment. And fourth, you want a market that is growing. A neighborhood losing population will eventually lose storage demand with it. You want to be in the path of where people are going, not where they have already been. Here is what most first-time investors do not expect. Finding the right piece of land is only the beginning of the location challenge. You also need the right zoning. Many American cities have become actively resistant to approving new storage facilities because storage creates very few jobs and generates minimal tax revenue compared to retail or commercial office development. You might find a perfect piece of land on a busy road in a dense suburb and then spend 6 months in front of a zoning board fighting for permission to build. Some developers spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees, engineering studies, and planning consultants before learning the zoning approval will never come through. Get the location wrong, and nothing else in this business can save you. Now let us get to the real numbers. Because getting into this business is not cheap, and the pitch you usually hear leaves out a significant number of line items. In 2026, building a basic single-story, drive-up storage facility in the United States costs between $55 and $85 per square foot for construction alone, before land. A climate-controlled multi-story facility, the kind common in cities where land is expensive, runs between $105 and $170 per square foot. Walk through a real example. You find 4 acres of land in a growing suburb and pay $1 million for it. You plan to build a 60,000 square foot facility. At $70 per square foot for construction, that is $4.2 million for the building. But the building cost is only the beginning. Before construction starts, you need to grade and prepare the ground. You need drainage systems, detention ponds, or underground infrastructure to manage rainwater runoff. Municipalities require this by law. Those drainage systems alone cost between $25,000 and $100,000 depending on the site. You need a perimeter fence, which runs $10 to $30 per linear foot. You need an automated gate with keypads and cameras, which costs between $500 and $1,500 per unit door. You need a small office building at the entrance for customer check-in and retail sales. You need electrical service heavy enough to handle continuous lighting throughout the facility. And if you are adding climate control, a transformer upgrade that can cost $50,000 to $150,000. Permits, architectural drawings, engineering studies, and professional fees, what the industry calls soft costs, typically add 20 to 30% on top of the hard construction number, added all together. Land, site preparation, construction, security, office building, drainage, electrical, paving, permits, and fees. A mid-sized 60,000 square foot suburban facility realistically costs between $4 and $7 million before you open for a single customer. A climate-controlled multi-story facility in a major U.S. city, $10 to $15 million or more. And after opening, you will spend another 18 to 24 months in a lease-up period, collecting revenue below full capacity while still making full loan payments every single month. That carrying cost is the part nobody puts in the brochure. Here is something that new storage owners get wrong. Not all units are equal, and building the wrong mix of sizes for your specific market leaves you with empty inventory that nobody wants, even in a perfect location. The most common sizes in the US market run from 5 by 5 feet all the way up to 10 by 30. The 5 by 5 is roughly a large closet, suited to a student storing a bike and some boxes. The 10 by 10, about the size of a bedroom, is the industry workhorse. It holds the contents of a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment during a move and rents for an average of $119 per month nationally. The 10 by 20 fits a full 3-bedroom house, or serves as working inventory space for a small business at an average of around $193 per month. The right mix depends entirely on your market. A facility near a dense urban campus needs smaller units. A facility in a suburban area near large single-family homes needs more 10 by 20s and 10 by 30s. Build too many of the wrong size, and you carry permanent vacancy in those units while the sizes your market actually wants stay full. And you cannot charge extra on a unit you already rented at the wrong price. That revenue is gone. Then there is the climate control question. Standard drive-up units leave belongings exposed to whatever temperature happens outside. In Texas in August, the inside of a metal storage unit can reach 130 degrees. In Minnesota in January, it sits below freezing for weeks. Wood warps, electronics corrode, documents go moldy, climate-controlled units hold temperatures between 55 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit year-round and keep humidity below 60%. That makes them the right product for furniture, antiques, art, wine, electronics, and business records. The financial case is clear. A climate-controlled 10 by 10 rents for about $15 more per month than a standard unit nationally. That sounds small, but multiply $15 across 300 climate-controlled units, and you have $4,500 in additional monthly revenue. $54,000 additional dollars per year, simply because you spent more on insulation and HVAC during construction. The construction premium is real, running roughly $50 to $90 more per square foot. But that investment earns back through higher rents for the entire operating life of the building, which runs 30 to 40 years. Here is something that surprises most people. The price you see advertised on a storage facility's website today can change tomorrow. Sometimes it changes twice a day. Modern storage operators use dynamic pricing software, the same concept airlines and hotels use, that continuously adjust rates based on how full the facility is, what competitors are charging, what season it is, and how fast units are being rented. When a size drops below 85% occupancy, the software lowers the price to attract new customers. When a size climbs above 90%, it raises the price to capture the remaining scarcity, and once a tenant has been renting for 6 to 12 months, they start receiving rate increase notices. Not because costs necessarily changed, but because the software knows that the hassle of renting a truck, unpacking everything, moving it, and repacking it is worth more than a $15 or $20 monthly increase to most people. They absorb it and stay. One asset management company, Cubics, deployed automated pricing and made nearly 15,000 individual price adjustments in a single year while keeping their tenant move-out rate at under 2%. That generated over $1 million in additional revenue without adding a single new unit. Rent is the foundation, but sophisticated operators build a second layer of income on top of it. The biggest is insurance. Most facilities require tenants to show proof that their belongings are insured. If tenants lack coverage, the facility sells it to them through a third-party program. Public Storage turned this into a massive business line. Their ancillary revenue, including insurance and related income, generated $335 million in 2025, with a net contribution after costs of over $200 million. Then there are late fees, which generate reliable revenue month after month from the inevitable percentage of tenants who pay late. Retail sales of locks, boxes, packing tape, and bubble wrap carry significant markups and require no additional staff. Partnerships with truck rental companies generate commissions for every moving truck booked at the facility. Add all of this together, and ancillary income can represent 10 to 15% of total gross income at a well-run facility. The real reason storage competes so favorably against other real estate categories is its extraordinarily low cost of operation. An apartment building spends 40 to 50 cents of every dollar it collects just keeping the property running. Plumbing repairs, appliance replacements, interior painting between tenants, carpet, leasing staff, maintenance crews. A storage facility spends around 30 to 35 cents of every dollar. There is no plumbing inside a storage unit. There are no kitchens or appliances. When a tenant moves out, you sweep the concrete floor and check that the latch works. That is the turn cost. In an apartment, a unit turnover costs thousands of dollars. In storage, it costs almost nothing. A typical facility operates with 2 to 3 on-site staff. Many run with a single manager. An increasing number operate fully automated. Customers rent online, receive a digital gate code, and access their unit without ever speaking to a human. But here is where we stop being optimistic, because there are real costs that new investors consistently underestimate. Property taxes are the single largest operating expense, typically consuming 10 to 15% of gross income. And here is the trap. Municipalities often reassess property values upward immediately after you build or buy, triggering a higher tax bill than you projected. Many new owners have seen their property tax bills jump 30 or 40% in the first 2 years. Insurance runs 3 to 5% of gross income, and significantly more if your facility is anywhere near the coast. After 2 major hurricanes hit Florida in late 2024, coastal property insurance rates jumped sharply across the storage industry. Lightweight metal buildings are vulnerable to hurricane winds and flooding in ways that brick and concrete structures simply are not. Marketing costs surprise most first-time owners. New facilities in competitive markets can spend 3 to 6% of gross income on digital advertising, primarily Google, just to maintain a steady stream of new customers during the lease-up phase. If you are not showing up when someone nearby searches for storage, you do not exist. Software subscriptions for property management, dynamic pricing, and gate access systems run another 1.5 to 3%. Capital reserves, money set aside for future roof replacements, gate motor failures, and asphalt repaving, should be 10 to 20 cents per square foot per year. On a 60,000 square foot facility, that is $6,000 to $12,000 a year going into a reserve account that you will not touch for years, but absolutely must have when the time comes. And the loan payment arrives every single month regardless of occupancy. That is the most unforgiving line in the budget. Every storage facility deals with delinquent tenants. People lose jobs, go through divorces, get sick, or simply forget. Unlike residential landlords who face lengthy court eviction processes that can drag on for months in states like New York or California, storage operators have a different legal tool available: the lien process. Here is how it works. When a tenant misses a payment, automated text and email reminders go out immediately. After about 15 days, the operator physically places an additional lock over the existing lock on the unit, cutting the tenant's access and making clear that the debt is being taken seriously. After 30 to 45 days, a formal lien notice goes out by certified mail, itemizing the full amount owed. After 60 days or more, the facility schedules a public auction where the unit's contents are sold to the highest bidder. These auctions have been popularized by television shows that make them look dramatic and profitable. In reality, they are a limited recovery tool. The winning bid at most storage auctions does not come close to covering the full amount of past due rent, especially once you factor in the administrative time, legal compliance requirements, and auction platform fees involved. The real purpose of the auction process is not to recover money. It is to clear out the unit so you can rent it again to someone who will actually pay. Most well-run facilities keep their delinquency rate below 2% of total revenue. In a downturn or a weak market, that number can climb to 5 or 6%, which meaningfully damages net income and requires significantly more management attention. But the biggest external threat to a storage investment is simpler than delinquency. A new competitor opens down the road. Because single-story metal buildings have relatively low construction barriers compared to hotels or office towers, capital flows into storage whenever returns look attractive. It does not take much for a market to tip from healthy competition into oversupply. When that happens, facilities start offering deals, first month free, 50% off, waived fees, to pull customers away from each other. Street rates drop, income falls. Facilities that were generating strong cash flow find themselves grind through a price war that benefits the customer and punishes everyone who invested in parts of Texas, Florida, Arizona, and the Carolinas. Markets where aggressive development occurred between 2022 and 2025, operators saw occupancy drop from 92% to 78% within 18 months as competing facilities opened nearby. The recovery from oversupply is slow. Competing facilities need to close, or the local population needs to grow into the excess supply. Neither happens quickly. Meanwhile, the investor keeps making full loan payments on a building that is not generating full income. This is why the analysis you do before buying or building a site is not just an academic exercise. It is the most important financial decision of the entire investment. This is the question every serious real estate investor eventually asks. And the honest answer requires looking at all three categories without pretending any of them is perfect. Compare storage to apartment buildings first. Apartments require significantly more capital to maintain from one year to the next. When a tenant moves out of an apartment, you are typically looking at $2,000 to $5,000 in turn costs: painting, carpet, appliance repair, cleaning. Do that 20 times a year across a 50-unit building, and you have spent $100,000 on unit turnovers before you count anything else. Operating expense ratios for apartments run 40 to 50% of gross revenue. In storage, the same ratio runs 30 to 35%. That 15-point difference, compounded over decades of ownership, represents an enormous amount of money. But apartments have something storage does not: 12-month leases that lock tenants in place. A storage tenant can walk out on 30 days' notice with no penalty. In a market downturn or an oversupply situation, that flexibility works against the storage owner. The apartment owner with 12-month leases has time to breathe. The storage owner watches occupancy drop in real time. Now compare storage to office buildings. In 2025, office property values in major American cities fell roughly 23% year over year as remote work permanently changed how corporations think about space. Tenant improvement allowances. The money landlords spend customizing office space for major tenants can run $100 per square foot or more. Office leases run 5 to 10 years, which sounds like stability right up until your anchor tenant announces they are downsizing by 40%, and you suddenly have 50,000 square feet of empty space and no replacement demand. Institutional self-storage sale prices, by contrast, rose 31% year over year in the first quarter of 2025 as capital rotated out of struggling office investments and into storage. The direction of money is telling the honest summary. Storage wins on operating efficiency, staffing simplicity, and resilience across economic cycles. Apartments win on the depth and reliability of residential demand, which population growth guarantees will never permanently disappear. Office loses on nearly every dimension in today's environment, with exceptions only for the rarest trophy assets in the most constrained urban markets. When a real estate investor buys or sells a storage facility, they use a formula called the capitalization rate, or cap rate, to determine its value. You take the facility's annual net operating income, which is total income minus all operating expenses, before the loan payment, and divide it by the purchase price to get the cap rate percentage. Flip it around and you can calculate property value. Divide net operating income by the cap rate. In today's market, stabilized storage facilities in good suburban U.S. markets trade at cap rates between 5 and 6.5%. Here is why this matters for building wealth. If your facility generates $200,000 per year in net operating income at a 5% cap rate, its market value is $4 million. Push net operating income to $250,000 and the value becomes $5 million. You created $1 million in property value without changing a single brick. The income changed. Nothing else did. This is why sophisticated storage operators obsess over occupancy and ancillary income. Every dollar of additional annual income they generate translates to roughly $20 of property value at a 5% cap rate. Now here is what the actual math looks like for two realistic scenarios on a 60,000 square foot suburban facility built for $6 million all in. In the optimistic scenario, you reach 90% occupancy within 24 months in a market without major new competition. Your average rent across roughly 540 units is $125 per month. That gives you around $729,000 in rental income. Add ancillary income of $80,000. Total gross income is around $809,000. Subtract operating expenses at 33%, about $267,000. Net operating income is $542,000 per year. At a 5.5% cap rate, that facility is worth approximately $9.8 million. You invested $6 million. That works. In the realistic scenario, a competitor opens 1 mile away within 12 months of your opening. You reach only 75% occupancy by month 24, and promotional discounting to compete drops your effective gross income to around $660,000. Operating expenses stay largely fixed at $250,000. Net operating income falls to $410,000. At a 6% cap rate in a supply-pressured market, the facility is worth $6.8 million. You invested $6 million and 2 years of stress for $800,000 in equity, a 14% total return over 2 years. The difference between a good scenario and a bad one is a single competitor on the same road as you. The people who succeed treat this as an operational business, not a passive investment. They study demographics obsessively before committing to a site. They use dynamic pricing software. They manage their ancillary income, insurance, retail sales, late fees, with the same attention they give to base rent. They build climate control where the market supports the premium. They stay out of markets already crowded with new construction. And they hold enough capital to carry the facility through the 18 to 24-month lease-up period without panicking. The people who fail build cheap facilities in oversupplied markets, set static rents and never adjust them, ignore ancillary income, and underestimate how long the lease-up takes. The building looks the same from the road. The financial result is completely different. The U.S. storage industry generated over $45 billion in annual revenue in 2025. Public storage alone brought in $4.8 billion and kept nearly $1.8 billion as profit. That money is very real, but it flows almost entirely to the operators who understood, before they spent the first dollar, exactly how this business makes money and exactly how it loses it. Behind every locked storage door is not just someone's forgotten belongings. It is a carefully engineered business built on recurring income, efficient operations, and one of real estate's simplest yet most resilient economic models. Would you put your money into a storage facility, an apartment building, or something else entirely? Tell us in the comments.